Please help me. I keep seeing her. I think I am going crazy. There's this creepy woman who's been showing up around me door a while. I couldn't make out any of her features when I first saw her, yet I keep seeing her. Sometimes when I am in a room, I swear I am not alone. It started a few months ago when I first saw her. I had just gotten off work when I saw her for the first time. She was in the forest. In the trees, long black hair covering her face. I could hear her breathing. Long and deep gravelly breaths occasionally stopped when she made a noise that it's hard to describe. You know when you go swimming and accidentally swallow a bit of seawater and you start gagging? It was kind of like that. I stared at her for a while, and she stared at me back. Then a flash of thunder cascaded in the night sky and it distracted me for a second. And then when I looked back at where she was standing, she was gone. I hadn't heard any grass or trees or leaves rustling, yet she was gone. I felt my entire body shiver as I got back into my truck and drove away from the worksite. For a little while, things were normal and she went into the back of my mind. And then one Sunday around noon, I had gone out for a walk. It was near the beach this time when I saw her. She was closer than she was the last time, and she was shaking her head almost in a circle, stumbling around everywhere she walked. She never drew closer to me, but she walked around people at the beach. Weirdly, no one ever seemed to notice her. She was still doing that heavy breathing and making that noise at that moment. She was gone much quicker that time, going into a bit of a crab walk position and then running seemingly into the sea. Once again, things seemed to go back to normal this time. Then a few weeks later, I had just left a dinner with my friends and I was near this large building that this town had. It had a bell. It was raining this time and I had my umbrella. I felt a presence staring at me and I looked around for a bit. I then saw her on the top of the building. Her hair was in her face, yet I felt her eyes, ancient and seemingly all-knowing, still facing me. She began to climb down the building in this almost spider-like position. She was moving faster than anything had the right to be. She was making this whisper-shout noise. It was both loud and quiet at that same time. The noise reminded me of that ending scene from the movie Sleepaway Camp. Once she reached the ground, she, in that same position, started running towards me. In seconds, she was right in front of me and then she was just gone. Then about 7 days ago, I was going home after work when I noticed something out of the corner of my eye. I stopped immediately as I recognized her, and then for some godforsaken reason I backed up to make sure I was right. She wasn't facing me this time and was walking down the street near a store I was at. Then, with her arms raised over her head and head thrown back, she began to slowly walk towards me. Her body seemed to ooze with rage and she opened and closed her hands, which were a stark white color. Tonight was the night that made me think I was going truly insane. I was asleep for a moment, and then I was awakened by a loud sound. It was like the sound of someone knocking on wood, but it was all around me, and then it went quiet. My door creaked open and there was that woman again. Her head was doing that circular thing and she was swaying as she walked, making that noise with her mouth. Her hands were making this very fast shaking motion as she moved, and then in a blur she was on top of me. I couldn't move. She moved her hair out of her eyes and I realized what I was looking at was a body that should have been dead, but wasn't. Her skin was rotted and some of it was peeling off her face. She stank of a stench that was so foul it made me want to vomit. She stared into my eyes until it was dawn, the noise transitioning into a long sort of death rattle. Once the sun came, she stood up on the bed. Her body was covered in rot and dirt. Then she spun around and slammed into the ceiling. She did almost a swim-like crawl out of the room and into the darkness of the hallway. Reddit, is there anything wrong with my mind? Is she just some figment of my imagination caused by some sort of mental illness? Or was she real?